Before we get into today's meat of the episode, which is the UFC Corey Sandhagan versus Yadong Song fight card, I do want to take a couple of moments here to talk about Elias Theodorou, who passed away on September 11th. I think the MMA community in general has lost someone very special here. I met Elias a couple of times in passing. He's from my neck of the woods, actually. Actually found out by reading his Wikipedia that his high school is just up the street from where I am. So, the high school he graduated from is just up the way from where I live. So that was interesting. It's not just a fighter passing away. Anytime a fighter passes away, we're going to be talking about the sadness that it brings. But I think Elias Theodorou goes beyond that because he's a guy who, by all accounts, was a very special person who fought for fighters' rights in terms of marijuana. He is somebody who did turn over, I believe, his UFC contract to the media for them to look at and kind of discover some of the exploitative clauses that exist in that contract, and is a guy that the UFC found very hard to deal with, and that's why he was cut despite going 8-3 with wins over the likes of Sam Alvey, Cesar Mutanche, Dan Kelly, Eric Anders, Trevor Smith, and losses to nothing but really, really solid fighters. Thiago Santos, Brad Tavares, and Derek Brunson. Kind of interestingly enough, he passed away from colon cancer. His last fight back in December was against Brian Baker, who is actually a survivor of cancer, and he won that fight by unanimous decision. So goes out to a degree on a high note. His fighting style was kind of also a bit interesting because he had a nerve condition from a broken hand that prevented him from loading up on punches tremendously well. I talked about it at great length. Also had an interesting show with Misha Serkinov where they watched obscure sports and gave their thoughts on it. Was on The Ultimate Fighter, Australia versus Canada, won that season. Just seemed like a really, really special guy, and if any friends or family of his come across this episode, my condolences. It's a dark time. Can't say that I knew him like super, super well. Just met him in passing a couple times, but honestly just had that aura of a super cool guy. So let us move on today to the fight card and send some thoughts and prayers and so on to his family. Corey Sandhagan versus Yadong Song fight card. I like some of the fights on this card. Obviously, the main event is awesome. The co-main event's a really good fight. And Andre Philly versus Bill Algio, also really good. But the lower part of the main card, which is made up by Alan Almadovsky versus Joe Pfeiffer for some reason, and Tanner Bozer versus Rodrigo Nascimento, is not great. And it's a bit weird because it feels like there are fights lower down. The sadly relevant fight between Aspen Ladd and Sarah McMahon. The probably exciting, interesting fight between Pat Sabatini and Damon Jackson. And even a fight like Tony Gravely versus Javid Basharat. All feel like they should probably fit higher. This card lost a lot of interesting fights like Luma Luke Bume versus Diana Belbita. Melissa Gatto versus Jillian Robertson, which was a fight I was really looking forward to. And I'm not really looking forward to the fight between Robertson and Maria Agapova, but we'll go deeper into that later. And of course, Giga Chikadze versus Sadiq Youssef was supposed to be on this card. All of which would have been, I think, excellent fights, but just some weird construction here. Maybe it'll get changed up by the time the fight card goes live. So let's talk about the main event. Kung Fu Kid, Yadong Song versus Corey the Sandman Sandhagan. So obviously, whenever we talk about Sandhagan, we've got to talk about the 5'11" nature of him as a bantamweight. That's huge. That's an amazing reach. Yadong is fairly long as well, fairly tall, 5'8". I think the reach advantage is only going to be about 3 inches. Yeah, 70 to 67. Although I think Sandhagan does have an effectively longer reach than that. I think this is a case where the fingertip to fingertip kind of undersells the reach in play. And I think we know what Sandhagen's game is, although it is evolving and becoming better over time. He's a guy who isn't insulated by his reach. His reach is an active part of his offense and his defense. He's very, very good at, his footwork is sharp, solid, keeps range, punishes you as you enter the pocket, can work in the clinch, can work at range, has an excellent ability to throw set-up shots with power and with mean intentions that make you focus on it, and then he cuts the angle and he hits you with more stuff. More strikes, it's all very set up, it all works together. He's an excellent striker. It's not just that he's tall. And he's good defensively. Tough chin. Better wrestler than you would probably think. Because I think there's an assumption that he's not a very good wrestler. And I think his fight with TJ Dillashaw, also with Peter Yan and so on, prove that this is not a guy who's going to be easily taken down and dominated by anyone short of Aljamain Sterling on his run to the title. Now, after all the nice things I've said about him, let's get on to Yadong Song. And that is that Yadong is himself an excellent, excellent pocket striker. He is alarmingly fast and powerful. He can throw kicks, punches with a speed that you do not normally see a fully loaded up, fully torqued kick with. We're talking a guy who gets the full hip activity into a kick that looks like other people's setup kicks. Other people's just kind of slap to the body or slap to the leg kicks. No. They're hard. They're amazing. But I do think that there's a core problem to his game, and that is that he doesn't have a very reliable or effective way to create the pocket. And admittedly, this is not a problem against a lot of fighters, because a lot of fighters at bantamweight want the pocket or don't have the range to really skirt around the outside of the pocket, but Sandhagan does. He has the ability to do a lot of what Kyler Phillips did when he beat Yadong Song. And the success that Julio Arce had until Yadong caught up with him and just put him down. And of course, this whole breakdown is going to sound so weird without context. So it's kind of largely is the problem that Peter Yan was able to make it a boxing striking match with Corey Sandhagan at points, truthfully. But it's because Sandhagan was also able to make him feel very uncomfortable from the outside. And I don't necessarily think that... I think that there's a level of discomfort that you're going to have exchanging long-range kicks and long-range strikes with Yadong Song. But it's not the same. He doesn't have the same adaptability, the same ability to break an opponent down that Peter Yan does. And Peter Yan also has way better pressure footwork and striking, as well as a much stronger wrestling game. And Song has a pretty solid wrestling game, and he's been at Team Alpha Male, so presumably that's only going to get better. But at the same time, I think Team Alpha Male is also not going to give him the feinting tools, the ability to open the doors, give him various different ideas and different concepts to create the pocket, which is where he is dominant at. And at the end of the day, I got to take Sandhagan. It's a nervous pick of Sandhagan because I don't really know how he finishes Song. And Song's power, Song's speed, Song's explosiveness all mean that at any second in the fight could take a very bad turn for Corey Sandhagan. But I think he can work around the pocket. I think he can, keep a distance and set up his own offense with a remarkable frequency. And that's kind of what it comes down to, is like, I trust Sandhagen to create the offensive situations he needs, and I don't quite trust Yadong Song to create those same offensive openings, the same situations where he is dominant against an opponent who is actually really good at avoiding those situations, or even has really just the tools to avoid those situations, because a lot of his opponents have not had those talents. And also, I do think Sandhagen's reactive double leg might come into play here, because I think he can probably put a Song on his back a couple of times. But maybe that Team Alpha Male training will give him the wrestling edge. Who knows? We'll see. I'm thrilled by this fight. This fight's going to be dope, I think. Betting odds, Sandhagen is the favorite, coming in at minus 250 to plus 175. Pardon me, minus 210 to plus 175. I don't know how I misread that. But that is the betting line right now. It makes sense. It's maybe a little bit wider than I'd like it to see it, but got faith in Team Elevation. They seem to have put together a really, really good game plan for Sandhagen a number of times. Like, every time Sandhagen has lost, it's been either, let's be honest, a fight against TJ Dillashaw that he probably won, and then Peter Yan is just amazing. And then the loss to Aljamain Sterling. Like I said, the Sterling loss is the shocking bad loss in his career. And if you want to go back to like 2017 to when he fought Jamal Emmers and lost, you could say the same thing, but like, Emmers was way further along in his career at that time. Middleweight bout between Chidi and Jacquani versus Gregory Rodriguez. Rodriguez is used to having a reach advantage. Like, 76-inch reach at middleweight is really, really good, but like, Chidi's got an 80-inch reach, so we're talking a 4-inch difference. He's got a bigger edge than Corey Sandhagen has. It's a bit of a weird fight to call, because I think in an absolutely perfect world, I would pick Gregory Rodriguez to win this fight quite easily, because I think there's a lot of flaws, a lot of gaps in Chidi's game that could be easily exploited by his very solid grappling. And the fact that he's, he can strike his way into the pocket, get into clinch, get the takedown, get the ground game going. He is a legitimately top-end grappler for this division. The problem is he does not like to fight that way. He does not fight in a smart, adapting to the opponent manner. And you saw that in the Armin Petrosian fight, when he largely just stood and banged with him. You saw that in the Julian Marquez fight, which he did win, which was a fight where he kind of gave Marquez everything he wanted and just happened to be better at it. I don't think that's the case with Chidi. I think if you stand at range with Chidi and strike with him either in the clinch or the pocket or at range, you're in for a rude awakening, because Chidi is super fast, very technical, very strong, very precise, very accurate. He was an amazing prospect for a really, really long time. And it seems like he's finally starting to put some things together. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some terrible habits that Chidi and Jacquani still has. Like, very, very poor habits that he still has. But I don't think Rodriguez exploits them. I think Rodriguez is a little too willing to just let the fight happen the way that Chidi's going to want it to happen. And that's why I'm going with Chidi and Jacquani to pick up a TKO victory. But like, the door for Rodriguez to win is there. The absolute ability to replicate some of the losses that have historically happened to Chidi is on the table. The Rafael Carvalho, the John Salter, the Andrei Korshkov. Like, these are all fights that I think Rodriguez could look at and replicate a lot of what they did and get it done. I just don't have the faith that he will. And it looks like the betting line kind of agrees with that. Minus 105 for Chidi, minus 115 for Rodriguez. So Rodriguez is like the thinnest favorite I think you're ever going to see. It's kind of that recognition that like the path to victory is there, but that he might not walk through it. Andre Fili versus Bill Algio. This is another interesting one. Algio's also a guy who's used to having a reach advantage, and he won't have one here. It's a half inch to Andre Fili. It's kind of a weird thing to think that Fili is still the more reliable fighter of these two, because he's not looked good lately. It's been a while since Andre Fili has gotten on a good run. And I mean, he's won 3-1 in his last 5. I think he was cut by the UFC and is now back. That loss to Joe Anderson Brito was really damaging. And I mean, losing to Sadiq Youssef, not a problem. Losing to Bryce Mitchell, not a problem. These are two up-and-comers in this world. And the win over Charles Jourdain still holds weight, even though Nathaniel Wood kind of recently just kind of worked Jourdain over. But it's really hard to pick Algio against anyone with significant athleticism and a significant gas tank and a significantly deep technical game. Because Algio himself is in great shape. Great cardio, creative, high fight IQ guy. Even has a win over Joe Anderson Brito, who just beat Andre Fili. But there is just no physicality that backs it up. There's no power. There's no ability to hurt people convincingly on the feet. There's not enough strength to resist a wrestling game. He's become very willing to grapple from bottom because he has to. It's very, very weird. It's just not the things that Fili has historically had an issue with. It's not like Fili's problem is not volume boxing and quality bottom grappling. It's horsepower. It's power. If Fili can kind of walk through him and impose a volume striking game with some takedowns, it should look a lot like the Bill Algio versus Ricardo Lamas fight, which Ricardo Lamas, much better fighter in his prime than Andre Fili. Title contender in his prime. But he was so very shot when he just kind of repetitively manhandled Algio. And Algio's beaten some good top grapplers. He's beaten Herbert Burns, but there are so many issues associated with Herbert Burns. And he beat Spike Carlisle, and Spike Carlisle is an amazing mess. A super fun mess, but my God, a mess all the same. And Fili is just way better put together. And that's why I'm picking him to win a decision. And I'm a little surprised because I honestly, when I was pondering this fight, I thought I was going to have a hot take. Apparently I don't, because Fili is a minus 130 favorite to plus 110 for Bill Algio. I don't expect Fili to finish him. Fili's never been a high-end finisher. Algio has, I want to say, never been finished in his career. I'm wrong. He was submitted back in 2012 by Dean Lavin, and submitted again in 2014 by Shane Burgos. But Burgos is very, very good. So there you go. Stupid fight. Stupid fight of the night. I don't know why Alan Amedovski is still on contract. He's fighting Joe Pfeiffer here. I'm not honestly surprised. I'm honestly still surprised that Joe Pfeiffer got a second chance on Dana White Contender Series after losing to Dustin Stolfus. I know it was by injury, but like when you're not blowing Dustin Stolfus, who's been pretty terrible in the UFC, out of the water, I have to wonder if you really at all have anything. But Amedovski is arguably the worst middleweight we've ever seen in modern MMA times in the UFC, because this is a guy who got embarrassed by Joe Holmes, who was a candidate for the worst UFC middleweight of all time. There's nothing really good about Amedovski's game. There's like some power. There's some insanity. There's like that insane confidence. But he's kind of undersized. He's lost 3 fights convincingly. I grant you, losing to Krzysztof Jotko, not a big deal. But losing to John Phillips and Joe Holmes, big deal. Pfeiffer is also not good. But there's some pressure to his game. There's some structure. There's some physicality. He's pretty strong. Has a grappling game. I think he either TKOs or submits Amidovsky in fairly short order. He's way bigger. He looks way wider in the shoulders and everything, and like is apparently 4 inches taller. So like I don't know. Amidovsky may look like a welterweight in there. The betting lines favor Pfeiffer, who comes in at minus 420 to plus 325. One of the larger lines on the card. A quick look here. I am going to see if it is the largest line on the card. I think it is. I'm looking at the other fights that like might be wider, and I'm not really finding them. And like the sad thing is that like again, I really don't think Joe Pfeiffer is a UFC level fighter. I don't. Honestly don't. But Amidovsky is that bad that I actually don't necessarily have a problem with him being the biggest favorite on the card. So, yeah, let's move on to the next fight, which is heavyweights Tanner Bozer versus Rodrigo Nascimento. Nascimento's got like the reach that you'd like to see to try to do some things. He's got some power. I was actually very... I for some reason, I was under the impression he was one of Cyril Gahn's early opponents, and that turns out not to be the case. He's got a lot of the physical attributes that you'd want, but I don't think he is persistent enough as a grappler, specifically at takedowns. And I don't think his stand-up game has really any structure to it, whereas Tanner Bozer, low end of the physical spectrum for heavyweight. Not super big, not super powerful, but he's got quick hands. He's got pretty quick feet, actually. He's got good footwork. Pretty quick feet to take him with him. He's smart. Like I've never questioned the decisions being made by Tanner Bozer. And that's why I'm taking him by decision here. I think he can kind of just matador Nascimento around the cage, be the ole part of this fight, while Nascimento comes forward and just gets picked apart on the counter. And yeah, that's why I do have to go that route. And minus 195 favorite, plus 160 underdog for Nascimento. Anthony Hernandez versus Marc-Andre Barriault. This is an interesting fight to me, and it's yet again another kind of question for Hernandez, which is you have all the physical talent in the world, the explosiveness, the power, the speed, the strength, and you have a interesting grab bag of skills. Some nice submissions, some powerful striking. Can you put it all together against somebody who's going to offer you a consistent threat, a consistent pressure game, and who is super durable in Marc-Andre Barriault? Because while Barriault has nowhere near the ceiling that Hernandez does, his ceiling is like, mid-level action fighter. He does know what he is. And that is that super tough pressure fighter who generally wins some tight decisions, breaks opponents, and does his thing. And I kind of hope Hernandez puts it together here because he's looked pretty good lately. His last 2 fights have been impressive. Keeping composed and beating Ronaldo Vieira. Having a good fight against Josh Fremd, who is like a less physically imposing version, but also longer and a little bit more creative version of Marc-Andre Barriault. So hopefully this is a chance for him to show off maybe some power wrestling, some power striking, a little bit of a counter game because Barriault is there to be countered. and an ability to have the same set of questions posed to him over and over again and have the answers. But it's kind of a hope pick because, like, Barrio is kind of maxed out where he is, and Hernandez does still feel like someone who can make some waves in the division. He's only 28 years old. Still has time. Though if he is still with the MMA Gold team, Gold Fight team, I would really recommend getting out of there because I don't know that team with Aspen Ladd and KGB Lee and Max Griffin. I don't know. It's not really worked out as well as I would have liked. Not sure if he is still there. We'll find out. But that is on Tapology where he is listed out of right now. He is the favorite at minus 170 to Barrios plus 145. So a close line as it should be, but one where you have to kind of favor the better athlete. Damon Jackson versus Pat Sabatini in featherweight action. I like this fight. I really do. Damon Jackson had a rough time last time out. He got a win, his third in a row against Daniel Argueta. But I think it also showed like some significant limitations to his game, like that he's not that physical. He has a pretty poorly put together striking game. He has to pressure. He has to grapple. And that's also Pat Sabatini's game. Because Pat Sabatini likes to grapple. Not a great stand-up guy. Not phenomenal. But a guy that hopefully will get some good grappling exchanges. And I just think Sabatini is that little half step above. He has the defense to avoid the choke game of the leech. So, I mean, if the leech can't choke you and can't hold you down, because I don't think he can, how does he win? So, yeah, I'm going with Sabatini, and the betting line is there for him. Minus 220 favorite. Plus 175 for the... Pardon me, Damon Jackson's not the leech anymore. He's Damon Action Jackson. Which is, I guess, good. Because, I mean, honestly... There is one leech, and his name is Jillian. So let's move on here. I will say there is a 3-inch reach advantage for Jackson, but I just don't. I don't see him capitalizing. Two fighters in the welterweight division that I just don't really feel the hype for, and that is Trevin Giles versus Louis Cauchy. Cauchy lost to Sasha Platnikov in his debut. It was bad. It was like really bad because Platnikov is not good. I'm going to go with Trevin Giles because we've seen him beat like just a higher level of competition. I don't think he's necessarily all that good. He has some significant defensive issues where he'll drop his hands, trying to do the slickster striking thing that he's just not that good. Like, we've seen him be out hand speeded and just like outrushed by Dricus Duplessis in his UFC run. It's just that I don't think Cauchy really belongs here. I think Cauchy is an athletic can crusher on the regional scene. It's kind of what it comes down to for me. He doesn't do anything terribly surprising. Doesn't vary it up. Bread and butter, meat and potatoes boxer with a powerful wrestling game, but it's not that powerful. It's not that amazing. And he's kind of small. 5'9", 71-inch reach. Giles has got 3 inches on both sides. Like, he's 6 feet tall, 74 inches. Feels like that's accurate. Has had success at middleweight, it should be mentioned. Honestly, I don't really know why Giles ever left middleweight. But, yeah, I am picking him here to TKO Louis Cauchy. And the betting odds are with me on that because Trevin Giles is a minus 205 favorite to the plus 170 underdog. Aspen Ladd versus Sarah Mcmahon, a fight that is sadly still very relevant in the women's bantamweight division. Sad in the sense that both of these are like super flawed fighters. Aspen Ladd has a terrible coaching situation going on where she's dating her coach, and it's one of those things. I honestly don't think you should date your coach. You could date in the gym, even that could get messy. But like the coaching, it becomes impossible to divorce yourself from a gym and like bad praxis because your personal life is intermingled in it. Lad has not looked good in a long time. Not even in moments. Like it's not that she lost to Raquel Pennington or she lost to Norma Dumas or she got knocked out by Jermaine Duranami. It's that, yeah, she does have that win over Yana Kunitskaya, and that was good. But she's had weight issues. She's had injuries. She's not looked the same after tearing her ACL and MCL, prepping for a fight with Sarah McMahon back in 2020. And in Sarah McMahon's case, she's old, like 41 years old is old for MMA. I hate to say it. And she always had some weird cliff edges in a lot of her fights. But I guess what it comes down to is that even in her losses lately, against some good talent, against the likes of Juliana Pena, against Marion Renault, and her wins against Lena Landsberg and Carol Hulsa, there have been moments of brightness that, like, the Olympian level athlete that Sarah McMahon is, the super strong lady, the amazing wrestler, the surprisingly powerful boxer, is still there. Even if it's wrapped up in a incredibly thin veneer of fragility, I still have to pick her. Picking a 41-year-old Sarah McMahon to win by decision. Wow. That's how little faith I have in Aspen Ladd. Like, it's an anti-Aspen Ladd pick. It's not a personal thing or whatever. It's just, I think she's in a bad spot, both in life and in fighting. And I also don't trust her to even make weight. So, same height, same reach. Interesting enough. Minus 130. People are betting on Ladd for plus 110 on Sarah McMahon. I can't hate on it. I can't hate on it. Sarah McMahon's a get just as much as Ladd is. It's just there has been, even when she loses and even in each of her wins, there has been moments of like Sarah McMahon title challenging talent. Whereas with Ladd, outside of the Kunitskaya fight, it is just so bad. Luba Lukbumi versus Denise Gomes, who's taking this fight on super short notice, replacing Diana Belbita. Fought less than a month ago on the Dana White Contender Series, August 23rd. Forget a month. It's like a couple of weeks ago. It's like 2 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, maybe. Lubumi's biggest weakness has always been that, like, she's just small. Like, she's 5'1", 62-inch reach. She's an atomweight. And she's fighting at strawweight because the UFC doesn't have an atomweight division. She will be the thinner fighter in this fight. Gomes is thick. But Gomes is also 5'2" with a 63-inch reach. So, like, there's not a lot of height, not a lot of reach. You know, I think Lukbumi can get her range game going. And I think if she does go in the clinch, I don't think Gomes really has a lot of answers for her. Because I don't think Gomes is very good. Like, they hype up her kickboxing background, but I don't think it's amazing. Her game is predictable. It does build, like, she has the cardio ability to break people down and win and get third round stoppages and so on. And to a degree, that's good to see. But there's no phenomenal athleticism to her. There's no super deep tactical game. There's not a lot of particularly great adjustments. There's a lot of spinning stuff that she likes to do, and I don't think that's a good idea at all against Luma Lukbume, who is one of the better strikers in the strawweight division. So I'm taking Luma by decision. Just because Gomes is tough and keeps up a decent pace. But if you look at who has beaten Luma, number one, they've all been like actually fairly controversial. Angela Hill, Lupita Godinez. With Lupita Godinez, you have like a nightmare stylistic matchup. Someone who's heavily physical and applies a wrestling game and has a very good kind of clinch wrestling game. And Angela Hill, who's just super well-rounded and puts together good game plans and smart and is a really solid fighter. But like, this feels more like the Sam Hughes fight than either of those. And that is why I'm going to go with Luma. But I am always in her pocket because I do really, really like her. I'm a big fan. So take that with a grain of salt, I guess. But the betting odds are also heavily in her favor, minus 270 to plus 220. And again, there is the late notice nature of this booking for Gomes, and she fought not that long ago. So I think there's more than enough solid reasoning to take Luma in this fight. Trey Ogden versus Daniel Zellhuber. I'm not 100% sold on Daniel Zellhuber. Like, he did beat Lucas Almeida on the Contender Series. Looked good in doing it. Has gone undefeated on the regional scene, but it's one of those cases where, like, 0-0 fighter, 8-4 fighter, 4-0, 4-1, 6-2, 3-1, 3-5, 1-0, 1-0, 0-0. Like, there is a win over Alexander Barhona, who was 12-3 coming into that fight. He's now 12-9 and lost to the likes of Brock Weaver, who I think we long ago established is not a UFC level talent. So there's a lot. There's a lot of unprovenness in there. I mean, he is 6'1". He does have a 77-inch reach. Does look pretty well rounded. And I am still picking him here to beat Trey Ogden by decision because kind of everything I said about Zellhuber applies to Ogden in the sense that a lot of his wins are against sub-UFC competition. Although he does have a win over, I remember he had one win that it was kind of TJ Brown. He did beat TJ Brown, but like lost to Nick Brown, lost to Thomas Gifford twice, lost to Jordan Leavitt in his UFC debut. You know, not a bad grappler, but he pairs that up with some defensive liabilities and not the greatest of wrestling game. And at least Zellhuber has an athletic base to build off of, and Ogden just doesn't. He is... There's just no reason to pick him in the UFC, unfortunately. And taking Zellhuber, the betting odds have Zellhuber as the favorite, I think, by a reasonably large amount. Minus 230 to plus 195. I wouldn't put it wider than that. I think that's fair. And then we kind of just have a repeat of that fight with Maria Agapova versus Jillian Robertson. Robertson's a good grappler. Not super physical, though. Like, not a bad wrestler, not a bad technical wrestler, but lacks the explosiveness, the strength, the speed, all of those things that you would really, really like her to have to really make it work, and has a pretty poor stand-up game. And her run in the UFC has been incredibly mixed bag because she came into the UFC off the Ultimate Fighter, beat Emily Whitmire, beat Molly McCann, which is a win that's aging very, very well, but then, you know, has lost to a lot of physical forces like Mayra Buena Silva, Macy Barber, Talia Santos, Miranda Maverick. And while Maria Agapova is not probably quite on that level, probably is a slight cut below that as a physical monster, and is mentally unstable as all hell, like someone who I will never cheer for, because the stories surrounding her and her training and her relationship with Marina Moroz while they were training partners is kind of horrifying. If you want to learn more about that, go ahead and dig in, but I'll spare those who don't want to know it. It's just, I don't see how Robertson physically competes with her, because that, like, the problem, I think, honestly, is that Robertson doesn't have the physicality for her style. Like, there are ways around physical limitations. Being kind of like a top control grappler who relies on takedowns isn't really one of them. So Agapova by decision, wouldn't be surprised if she stopped her. And it hurts me a little bit to say that. Now, bright side, Agapova is taking this fight on short notice, because it was originally supposed to be, who was Robertson supposed to face off with? Melissa Gatto. And admittedly, Melissa Gatto is kind of a similar type of fight, like, a super physical person, super strong, but like a weak technical wrestler. And that's kind of the thing, is Agapova, I think, is a better defensive wrestler than Gatto is. But Agapova also did have a absolutely embarrassing loss to Shayna Dobson back in 2020. So cross your fingers and hope for that. But yeah, she should win this fight. And I'm actually really surprised that Robertson is the favorite, because if I pull this up here, I closed it before reading the odds. My apologies. Minus 140 for Robertson, plus 115 for Agapova. I know it's a short notice fight, but it is really hard thinking of how Robertson wins. Just is. Tony Gravely versus Javet Basharat, the Snow Leopard. Gravely is just such a throwback fighter. Like, it feels like he's a guy who should have been fighting in the UFC, like, I don't know, a decade ago or something, and would have been, like, really good. Not even a decade ago. No, probably a decade ago. Like, around 2012 to 2015. Like, he's a wrestler who's learned how to power box, but doesn't have the greatest of footwork, doesn't have the greatest movement. Head is kind of predictable when it moves. There to be hit, there to be countered. Not necessarily any kind of great grappler, or even a particularly great lockdown wrestler. Like, the takedowns are there, but they don't really lead to anything. Which kind of leaves him just kind of like being a low-paced power puncher who is kind of short, because he's 5'5". Now, he does have the same reach as Basharat, but again, I think that's very misleading, because I think it's a case where, like, dude's got broad chest, broad shoulders that I think are exaggerating a reach that probably does not have that 69-inch reach impact. You can probably guess I'm going with Basharat here. Probably to win by TKO, because Gravely will run face first into shit. But let's talk about Basharat, because I think this guy's a legitimate prospect. I do think that there are certain physical limitations to his game. Like, there's a certain level of, you're not quite fast enough, not quite powerful enough. But, like, there's a good physical level to him. He's got good volume, good head movement, good alternating defense, adjusts, adapts, doesn't give you the same looks constantly, which is good. Good counter game, mixes kicks, goes to the body, goes to the head, goes to the legs. That's another thing. Gravely will almost exclusively go to the head. And yeah, I just think he's way too deep. And it looks like the betting line is with me on that, because he's minus 180. So plus 155 for Gravely. And the opening fight of the night is Nicholas Mota versus Cameron Van Camp. I am going with Nicholas Mata to win that fight via decision. Van Camp is super tough. Definitely scrappy. But I feel like a broken record here because I said it about Robertson. I said it about Ogden. I said it about Damon Jackson. Like it kind of comes back to this just not super athletic. Now the concern is that Van Camp is at least huge. 6'2", 4 inches of extra reach. But he is a guy who, again, it's insulation, not active defense. And I think Mata won't be gun shy. Won't be chased off by his power. He will stalk him down, put the pressure on him, make it a pocket fight, make it a clinch fight, and land the shots that he needs to win to get the better of the exchanges here. But again, I wouldn't be surprised. Van Camp does have like some kind of like he has a knack for finishing. He has a little bit of that. Like if you give him an opening, he will be in there. He's not a foot in the door kind of guy. He's like the hips are in the door kind of guy. If you make mistakes, and Mata will make mistakes. So should be an interesting fight. Should be good scrap, good action fight. But yeah, I have to go with Mata. And he is the minus 240 favorite to the plus 195 on Van Camp. Which is interesting because that, I don't know. There's some, that feels too wide. Like on a fight card where like Agapova is an underdog to Robertson, you're giving Mata that kind of edge. I don't know about that. It's not a bad fight night card, considering that it lost some fights. I'm actually pretty happy about it. What's next up from the UFC after this? Because I know... Oh, do we get a week off? Do we get a week off finally? Finally. I think we had a week off not that long ago. But... yeah, we're off until October. When we get Dern versus... Shannon. Now that's not a good fight card. although Alexei Olenek versus Ilir Latifi, always worth some time, always worth some fun, and that's kind of it though. Like I'm looking forward to like nothing. Oh, okay, Mike Davis versus Slavaclaus. Vyacheslav Borshev. That's a good fight, and I guess Ronnie Barcellus versus Trevin Jones could be pretty fun. Although I still feel bad that Barcelos is just never really got his due. Like a guy who came into the UFC, won 5 straight fights, including over Said Nurmagomedov, and then kind of just got punished for it with like low end fights. Like he got booked a couple times. Like he did pull out of a fight with Merab Dvalishvili. And he did get booked with Rafael Sankow, but Sankow pulled out. But then like Timur Valiev and Victor Henry, and I don't know. Just kind of a lot of trap fights. Anyways, that's the fight card. Enjoy it. It apparently is not getting much better for a bit, so we might as well take the little victories in life. Check out the links below for everything you want to see. And tomorrow I will be streaming on Twitch for the Gronk Baseball Championship. So, hey, check that out. Mio Dread is the name on Twitch. And it's in the link tree below.